Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me go to Mr. Brooks. It seems to me one of the principal virtues of the true lender rule is that it creates a clear rule, provides certainty in advance about who's responsible for a loan when banks and non-banks partner to make the loan. Could you just tell us why is that important? Why is it important for market participants to have that regulatory certainty? And what would the effect be if this rule gets repealed and there is no certainty?
Well, Senator Toomey, I really appreciate the question. The certainty that's most important here under the true lender rule has to do with the certainty of the interest rate enforceability. Okay, so the question is, should banks invest dollars in lending to low and moderate income people whose risk profile necessitates a somewhat higher interest rate for the loan to be valid and profitable? If the bank is not sure, or if the markets are not sure whether that interest rate will be valid when that loan is sold into a credit card securitization or sold into a personal loan securitization, the market won't invest in that, right? Which means that those loans go away. And I can't emphasize this too much. It is not that the loans become cheaper. It's the loans go away. And I think General Stein's comment that there are people out there who actually want those loans to go away is an interesting sort of lens into the way to think about this.
Let me just, the idea that we should forbid people from having access to loans because they can't be trusted to make a good decision for themselves, does that strike you as a little bit patronizing and condescending?
Well, Senator, I guess I would hesitate to make characterizations of other people who I respect. But look, our thought at the
about the idea.
Yeah, the idea is not consistent with the concept of a pluralistic capitalist democracy. Personally, I took out relatively high interest rate student loans that were not tax deductible, that today people would find shocking. That's what allowed me to get my life on track from a low income small town in southern Colorado. And so I don't look at interest as a bad thing. If I'm someone who has dings on my credit and I need a 2-year personal loan to replace my roof or do one of the many things that people use these loans for, I don't think it's up to me to say that's a bad thing.
Yeah, might be okay for the consumer to be able to make that decision. Some have suggested that the true lender rule creates a new legal regime that effectively revokes state usury laws and allows non-bank lenders to issue these loans that are not subject to regulatory oversight. So both of these things. But as I think you mentioned in your comments, for many decades, both federally and state chartered banks have had the legal authority, and it really hasn't been very controversial, to export their interest rates. So does the rule really have the effect of undermining states' rights? And what about this claim that somehow it creates a regulatory wasteland where these loans are just not subject to regulation?
Yeah, so Senator, there's a lot there, but I would just say, first of all, the concept is not new. As I say, Justice Brennan, no less, writing for a unanimous Supreme Court, upheld the principle of rate exportation. President Jimmy Carter upheld that right for state banks as well. And so, to be clear, the idea that a rate of interest can be charged that is higher than the borrower's home state rate has been the law of the land since 1978. There's nothing new about that, and that was supported by broad bipartisan majorities of both parties. In terms of the regulatory wasteland, there are 2 points to understand here. First of all, these predatory lenders that people are talking about are state licensed entities. Let me repeat that. They are state licensed entities. And a state is absolutely free to yank the license of any of those kinds of companies that it wants to, and it should if it thinks that consumer abuses are going on. The point of the rule, however, is simply to make clear that banks can leverage their balance sheet through loan sales to make more credit available to more people. If that principle is debatable, I think someone should stand up and debate it. But if the idea is for Advance Americas, they should have their licenses yanked by the state who licensed them.
Thanks. Just quickly, Professor Calamaris, I think some have clearly indicated that their concern with the true lender rule is that if it were overturned, it would subject some number of additional loans to state price caps. In the view that price controls are good for consumers, is it your view that price controls are good for consumers and that's what we ought to seek? I think your mic's off.
Oh, is it on now?
Now it is, yes.
Yeah. The evidence, which I summarized in my statement, it clearly shows that usury laws are bad for consumers, that they limit credit availability for consumers, especially for low income and small borrowers and high risk borrowers. So there's no question about that, and that's not just my opinion, that's the entire economic literature. What I would also point out is that the opportunity that I think all of us have in our minds, that we'd like to see borrowers who can qualify for lower interest rate loans not be tricked into high interest rate loans.
Right.
I think that's a valid issue. And what I want to point out, I hope everyone will just take a few minutes to read my 5-page appendix on what's going on right now in financial inclusion and protecting consumers coming from these fintech bank partnerships. It's really exciting. It's quite impressive. It has absolutely nothing to do with payday lending, except that it is an alternative to payday lending. And it is steering low-income and low-dollar borrowers to much lower interest rates. That is what's at stake here. So I think we have a pretty severe mischaracterization of these very flexible and innovative new partnerships that are really empowering consumers in new ways. I give many examples in my testimony. Since I wrote my testimony, some people have actually come to me and said, hey, you left me out. I'm a firm that's doing this too. So it's actually a very broad-based and exciting new movement. And I hope we don't, in some misguided attempt to thwart something, undermine this progress.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.